solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
A month of shrieking hype, millions of words of ink, hundreds of hours of the shrillest television ever produced add up to pretty much nothing.
Why didn't you stop and say, Mr. President, this is wrong. I cannot discuss this with you?
It's a great question. Maybe if I were stronger, I would have.
James Comey's the leaker-in-chief.
I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter.
That doesn't sound like, somebody you want to be your FBI director. It sounds like J. Edgar Hoover.
The tweets have begun. The president has just tweeted, despite so many false statements and lies, total and complete vindication. And wow, Comey is a leaker.
You ever wonder why, of all the things in this investigation, the only thing that's never been leaked is the fact that the president was not personally under investigation?
The only thing that didn't leak was the truth. Thank God Trump fired him. He needed to go.
They are fabulous, by the way.
Right, and they're going to be here live. Actually, they're here live, but they're going to be using their instruments soon.
That's them right there. They're getting the feel for the stage. And you know what? I wish we had smell-o-vision, because Famous Dave's is out there again today.
Isn't there a window in here we can crack?
Yes, it probably is.
Unfortunately, it would require throwing a chair through it. Crack the window. You know what? If you are in Midtown in the next 2 hours, stop by 48th and 6th Avenue, because we will provide you breakfast and also a big show.
Right, and talk about yesterday being, and Harris, thanks so much for sitting in for Ainsley. You're going to have a long day. You're back at noon.
My honor to be here.
And then you're are you at 2 o'clock
No,
today?
just outnumbered at noon Eastern.
And then, we will be tube-side.
And then out of the house with my kids.
Which is one of the great success stories in the history of television.
Aw, you guys are so sweet.
It's a great show.
There's a check in the green room for you.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, you know what? Yesterday's show with James Comey probably also very highly anticipated and
4
viewed
hours
as well, not only on C-SPAN, on all the channels as well. If you missed it, here are the highlights. For the most part, 3 words you need to know about: liar, leaker, and Lordy. All right? James Comey called the president a liar. The president is now calling James Comey a leaker. And Lordy, does he hope that there are tapes? Anyway, regarding the leaking, we found out James Comey himself, the head of the FBI, recently fired, was leaking to the New York Times. Listen to this.
The president tweeted on Friday, after I got fired, that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
And was that Mr. Wittes?
No, no.
Who was that?
A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School.
Oh, really? So I'm tweeting, I'm tweeting. I am leaking to the New York Times, and I would have done it myself, but I just wanted to get out of town, and I didn't want to make, it was going to be like pigeons with a bunch of bread, so
right,
I left.
There you're speaking as James Comey. Now, Brian, speak as the President of the United States, who's just tweeted.
52 minutes ago.
Yeah, he just said this: despite so many false statements and lies, total and complete vindication, and wow. Comey is a leaker, and that is in projection. The president's got to get himself in legal jeopardy because of that. James Comey said, I'm leaking to the New York Times, and the ease in which he said it, Mr. Law and Order, makes me think, what else did he do? How comfortable is he leaking?
And this was part of Mark Kasowitz's, who is the personal attorney for President Trump. This was part of his statement. He waited until the hearing was over, and then we found out, in the next half hour or so, now Mr. Trump's attorney is going to step up for the president. He spoke, and he pointed right to that issue. That was a heart part of his statement.
Right. They're examining maybe taking legal action.
Yeah, they're looking at what their options are today.
Catherine Herridge reports a source close to the president tells Fox News they are considering their options and whether Comey's leak to the media violated his FBI employment agreement. Jonathan Turley, the famous attorney and also law professor down in Washington, D.C., makes a great case, and that is Mr. Comey may have broken the law in releasing those documents, because remember we heard the story that as soon as he left the meeting with the president, he went and with his secure FBI laptop, he would make the notes. When you make the notes on government property like that laptop, that note belongs to the government. So he was not authorized to release that, and he did. So it's a lot of gray out there. Is he going to be charged? Probably not. But nonetheless, he is a leaker.
But the important point that you're making, though, is that this was not just a personal, like, I pick up a Post-it and I made some notes. This was then a government document. That's the point you're making.
And by the way, before you, James Comey came out sincere as an excellent communicator, especially for a law enforcement guy who's used to just following cases. I mean, he's a very good broadcaster and communicator. However, don't lose sight of the fact that his biggest critics up to maybe a month or 6 weeks ago were Democrats who were calling for him to be fired and worried about the veracity of which he was saying things.
They wanted him gone.
And the other thing is,
until he was gone.
The other big story, Steve, it doesn't start with an L, but it's an O, obstructionist. Was he actually, was the president being an obstructionist? And one of the things he says is the president uses the word hope during obstruction comments. And the word is, well, he's the president of the United States. He has me one-on-one in the Oval Office. When you use the word hope, of course he's trying to tell me to do something with a wink and a nod. And I'm saying to myself, is that the same Oval Office where Mark Meadows was one-on-one and said, Mr. President, I'm not going along with that health care plan? Where James Jordan and every single congressional lawmaker, Republican, who were so in awe of the president that they didn't go along with the health care plan and embarrassed him?
So that's one example of where James Comey was saying, well, you know, I'm not quite that strong. I got to back down. He had another one, and it had to do with Loretta Lynch's meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac, that famous meeting now, and conversations that he was having about her asking him, don't call Hillary Clinton's situation an investigation, call it a matter. Well, I didn't feel like I could step up to Loretta Lynch, so he backed down again. So those are two instances.
It's bizarre for an attorney general to tell the FBI director, don't use the word investigation when they're doing an investigation.
Brian, he is accusing Loretta Lynch of exactly what he has accused the President of the United States of doing, influence. In that case, he's saying that Loretta Lynch influenced him, which would ultimately influence the election.
He was a wimp, according to him.
If you missed the soundbite yesterday, here is the chairman, Senator Burr, and James Comey talking about Loretta Lynch.
At one point, the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me. It gave the impression that the Attorney General was looking to align the way we talked about our work with the way a political campaign was describing the same activity, which was inaccurate. We had a criminal investigation open.
And just to be detailed, there is a source close to Attorney General Lynch that came in and said, yeah, I remember that meeting. He wasn't alone. It was a group of us. I said to everyone, use the word matter, not investigation. He says that's traditional with investigations, not to reveal it publicly. And James, no one said a word, including James Comey.
You know what's interesting about that?
In fact, I might as well be totally accurate. Here's the quote. It says from the tweet, no one, including the director, contested that view.
I thought you had summarized it. What's interesting, then, is they dispute what Mr. Comey said. Also yesterday, Mr. Comey was asked about a New York Times article regarding Russia and that campaign aides had close contact with the intel community over in Russia.
The top intel chiefs,
Right, exactly. So anyway, Mr. Comey said that story not true, but then the New York Times looked at it and they said, we stand by our story. So obviously the New York Times doesn't trust what Mr. Comey said yesterday regarding the fake news. And the other thing is, it was 7 months ago, on the night that Hillary Clinton lost the election, that her campaign team put together the excuse that lingers to this day. The reason she lost was because of Russia, and ultimately that generated the hearing yesterday with Mr. Comey. If you missed it, here's Amy Parnes, who wrote the book Shattered, on this program 35 minutes ago.
She wanted that case out there. She wanted to make the case that it was all Russia and Jim Comey. And this was their strategy from the very beginning that they were going to push. And it's still something that you hear her talking about right now. She's not looking inward to blame herself or what she did on the campaign. And I think a lot of Democrats particularly want to hear about that because they want to know, how do we learn from this? That there were problems with message and that they were over-relying on data. And they didn't really have they didn't mix in the art with the science, and that was the problem.
Well, I mean, and that's fascinating to see. And by the way, Shattered's going to be a movie and is still top 3 in the country on the New York Times list. That's why.
It's going to be a movie?
Yeah.
Didn't we just live through it? We have to watch it again?
Yeah, we have to.
Well, no, that was the reality series.
But I will say this. There's one thing that we haven't brought up yet. I was fascinated by one line more than anything else. He said to James Comey, I leaked that to the New York Times in the hope that it would lead to a special counsel.
Right.
And that's Robert Mueller seated his good friend. Wait a second.
He knows how it works. He knows how it works. He got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was his 3 a.m. call. He got up at 3 o'clock in the morning after he says the president tweet. It's linear. Yeah. And some people argue that it's revenge. It is linear. Cause and effect. Cause and effect.
Well, ultimately,
by definition, revenge. Perhaps.
It is his spin today. The only other thing that's interesting about the story is, we had heard ahead of time that Mr. Trump asked Mr. Comey for loyalty, right? Mm-hmm. And then yesterday, Mr. Trump's personal attorney said he never asked him that. And you know what that says? That says there are no tapes.
That's interesting.
Right.
By the way, before we go to
sooner or later,
Julian, in case anybody is watching and they see smoke over your shoulder, I was told to mention this.
Oh, my goodness. I left something on the grill.
That's on the grill. So not to worry, everybody. Jillian, catch us up.
I will. But yeah, I see some barbecue going on out there. That's what it is.
He's gone. Steve's
we
gone.
Can't smell that. Steve's gone. He's outside already. Don't worry about it. Good morning to you guys. We do have a lot of serious news to get to right now. Starting with a Fox News alert, British Prime Minister Theresa May's Conservative Party failing to secure a majority in the general election. The UK now has a hung parliament, meaning no party has enough representation to maintain control. May is now facing immense pressure to resign, but sources say she will not step down and will instead form a coalition with smaller parties. Also breaking, police not ruling out terror after a speeding truck plows into 2 police officers. The terrifying scene unfolding in D.C. overnight. Police say a white pickup truck mowed down a city worker and 2 cops on bicycles before smashing into an empty garbage truck. One of the officers fighting for their life at this hour. Now both the driver and a passenger are behind bars. Police finding a weapon in the pickup truck. Another alert right now, 2 American men accused of leading double lives, living as American citizens and terrorist operatives for Hezbollah. Investigators say they scouted potential targets for attacks, including New York's LaGuardia Airport and the Panama Canal. The 2 men from New York and Michigan charged with providing material support to the terror organization. They are both naturalized U.S. citizens and face up to 20 years in prison. Let's look at your headlines, guys. A lot of serious news, a lot of breaking news to keep an eye on, and we'll certainly keep you updated.
Case story is titanic.
Yep.
Unbelievable. They could be putting a Marxist in office.
You smell like
Welcome
sauce.
back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julie.
Good to see.
Grease fire under control.
No, it smells good. They're making jalapeno mac and cheese.
I know, it was great.
Going out with a spoon, people.
I wasn't the only one who ran over. I got down there. Matt Lauer was there with a little squirt bottle.
It was Matt Lauer? Yeah. That was so nice of him.
Doggone it.
All right, meanwhile, 13 minutes after the hour. Instead of standing up to the President of the United States, James Comey decided to orchestrate a leak by sharing his notes. Our next guest is a former DOJ whistleblower and says Comey's notes weren't personal or his to share.
And did you play hooky from work to watch the Comey hearing? Well, you're not alone. A lot of people did.
Busted at the bar. I think that's bull feathers.
Lordy.
It didn't dawn on me originally that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
Which it ultimately did. Former FBI Director James Comey admitting in his testimony that he leaked his memos to the press. So is this the deep state hard at work leaking? Here with more is president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation and former DOJ official J. Christian Adams. Mr. Adams, what did you make of Mr. Comey yesterday revealing he is one of those darn leakers that Mr. Trump has talked about being the real problem down in Washington?
Well, this is standard operating procedure, Steve, in Washington. The bureaucrats inside the Beltway, and make no mistake, James Comey became one, were using the media, using confidential information to advance attacks on the President of the United States. That's what they do. I saw it at the Justice Department. Lawyers there leaking memos, internal legal analysis to the Washington Post about Georgia voter ID, which the Post dutifully published in full. So this is what they do to undermine conservative administration.
Sure. We heard Mr. Comey say that essentially he went in and he talked to the President of the United States, and this was under oath, and then he ran out to his SUV and got on a government laptop and then typed out the memo. Well, if he's using a government laptop, and you're the lawyer, I'm not, but it would seem that that memo would belong to the government and not Mr. Comey, and so was he authorized to release that to the New York Times?
Well, of course not. And why didn't he have the guts to do it himself? I mean, you know, here you have essentially a government employee working with a law professor, which reminds us how rotted the legal profession in law schools have become, working with the New York Times. But yes, this was something he did as a government employee. And I'm litigating right now to defend a federal agency, the Election Assistance Commission, where the Justice Department is stepping in and preventing anything from getting out the government employees think. So, you know, this is a department that has constantly been on the side of concealing information. They didn't hear. I wonder why.
Right. Jay Christian, source according to the New York Post, close to the Trump camp, said it couldn't have gone better yesterday. Everybody saw through Comey. What do you make of what we saw yesterday?
Yeah, that's right. Watching this was the biggest letdown since Star Wars: The Phantom Menace didn't live up to the hype. I mean, there was so much hype, and it was such a dud. I mean, I was waiting for Jar Jar Binks to ask questions. I mean, it was a disaster. The crazies out there on other networks thought there was going to be some big revelation. We learned that the Russians did not hack the election, and that Trump wasn't under investigation. There's the story.
It is indeed. All right, Jay Christian, thank you very much for joining us live.
Thanks.
All right. 7:20 now here in New York City, and we've got a Fox News alert. Election results putting pressure on the British Prime Minister to quit. What that means for Brexit and the rest of the world, including us, live from London next. And a brand new bombshell revealed on accused NSA leaker Reality Winner. She wanted to burn down the White House.
All right, time now for your news by the numbers. Time now for your news by the numbers. First, nearly 6,000. That's how many fewer people from the 6 countries in President Trump's travel ban are coming to the U.S. Arrivals from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen falling by nearly 50% in March and April compared to a year ago. It sounds like it's in place. Next, 3,300. That's how many people could lose coverage as more insurers drop Obamacare in Washington state. 2 counties won't have any insurers participating in the individual market next year unless another company steps in. And finally, $3.3 billion. That's how much America reportedly lost in productivity. Harris was talking about that. From workers distracted by watching fired FBI Director James Comey on Capitol Hill. Sorry, America.
Meanwhile, we've got a Fox News alert. You're looking live at images from London right now. British Prime Minister Theresa May just arriving at Buckingham Palace. She's got a meeting today, Brian, with the Queen.
Yup. There she will ask for permission to form a government despite losing her majority in Parliament.
Let's talk more about this because it does affect a world away, markets in general. Foreign affairs correspondent Benjamin Hall is live for us in London with the latest on this. So the majority is gone. She says she's not quitting.
Oh, Brian, Stephen Harris, this was a political miscalculation, if ever there has been one. A stunning result this morning. The Conservatives were expected to win by over 20 points, and they threw that away in a matter of weeks. So what we have now is a hung parliament. Yes, she won more votes, she won the most seats, but not enough to form a majority. Nevertheless, she is going to try and do just that, which is why she's on her way to Buckingham Palace at the moment. The Conservatives won 319 seats, and Labour 261, with a smattering of other parties winning the rest of them. Theresa May called the election because she wanted a personal mandate. Well, that has absolutely backfired, and already there are questions about how long she can stay as Prime Minister, though she has announced that she will not resign.
At this time, more than anything else, this country needs a period of stability. And if, as the indications have shown, if this is correct, that the Conservative Party has won the most seats and probably the most votes, then it will be incumbent on us to ensure that we have that period of stability, and that is exactly what we will do.
She may have won the most seats, but it was supporters of Jeremy Corbyn, the far-left leader, who were celebrating this morning, though it is looking very unlikely that he's going to be able to form a government.
If there is a message from tonight's result is this. The Prime Minister called the election because she wanted a mandate. Well, the mandate she's got is lost Conservative seats, lost votes, lost support and lost confidence.
But very much a fluid situation at the moment, and the fact that Theresa May is on her way to Buckingham Palace does suggest she's going to try and form that government, and we suspect that that's going to be in partnership with the DUP. That's a Northern Irish Unionist party. They hold 10 seats, so combined that's going to push them just over the amount. But again, whether or not she can survive in the long term is a different thing, and of course it raises many questions about the ongoing Brexit negotiations, as well as the value of the pound at the moment. So a fascinating day, still moving very quickly. Back to you.
Before we let you go real quickly, and you touched on what I want to ask you about, because as they kind of cobble this together and try to bring government into a stable position, what does it mean for Brexit?
Well, the DUP is one of the few parties that actually has tended to agree with the Conservatives on Brexit, so that is one issue. But in terms of this hard Brexit, that is seeming less likely, and that's because the Irish parties have a border with Ireland. They're the only part of the UK that does, and they're going to likely say they want free transport across those. So that's one thing that's going to change, and the market's really resounding because they were afraid of a hard Brexit. We might see a much softer Brexit now, but again, it's all up in the air.
Indeed, the pound is
Benjamin,
right
thank
now.
you.
Benjamin Hall, great job. I'll tell you, even if you do get a government, how can they govern? It's going to be so hard to get anything done with something so brokered as...
You mean it's divided?
If they do, in fact, be able to get a majority.
We do, indeed.
Yeah, well, at least we have slight majorities, I guess.
All right, meanwhile, straight ahead on this Friday, Democrats always get accused of playing identity politics, and Hillary Clinton just confirmed it.
Maybe they'll call it identity politics. Stand up and say your identity is as important and valuable as the identity of anybody else.
Her message to the young people of America seems to be an internet troll.
Wow. And more on the James Comey hearing. Former White House press secretary under President H.W. Bush, Ari Fleischer's here. And I think this is the part where they forgot to tell me that we stand up, Ari, and we come over and we...
Did the president at any time ask you to stop the FBI investigation into Russian involvement in the 2016 U.S. elections?
Not to my understanding, no.
Did any individual working for this administration, including the Justice Department, ask you to stop the Russian investigation?
No.
This is the president speaking. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. You don't know of anyone that's ever been charged for hoping something.
I don't, as I sit here.
Why didn't you stop and say, Mr. President, this is wrong. I cannot discuss this with you?
It's a great question.
Did you tell the White House counsel that is not an appropriate request? Someone needs to go tell the president that he can't do these things?
I didn't, no.
Okay. Why?
In the moment, it didn't come to my mind.
Former White House press secretary under President George W. Bush, Ari Fleischer, is here. Ari, always good to see you.
Good morning.
I want to jump right in with something that I noticed was kind of thematic yesterday. And you saw the White House jump out in front of the hearing asking for some support from Republicans. We saw Steve Reich, we saw a little bit from Marco Rubio, but it was crickets out there outside that room. Why is that among Republicans?
Funny, Harris, I noticed the same thing yesterday. Typically at a hearing like this, you'll ask questions, then you'll pound the table and state a conclusion and
then
defend
everybody
the president.
tweets and...
They didn't do it, and here's why, I think. And it's the president's fault in large part. The president has given Republicans pause before they jump into the foxhole with him. And partly it's because he's not very popular. His numbers don't give Republicans confidence that they can defend him. And it's also because of some of his tweets. I think the message that the president has got to get is if he wants people in his foxhole who will pound the table and defend him, with one message, don't make it hard for those people. Sure. The two tweets about Barack Obama wiretapping Trump Tower, and then the tapes about Comey give Republicans on the Hill pause. They're not sure how far to go to defend him. They want to defend him. They should be pounding the table. It's important for the policies to get enacted that the president be successful.
But your party is on the line here. A lot's at stake. I mean, I get all of that. And maybe you're not going to always agree with him, and we saw what the establishment did in the run-up. I mean, they ran away until they had to come to the table with this president. So I get all of that. But you've got an opportunity yesterday with James Comey basically saying, I'm a weakling, I couldn't stand up to the president, couldn't stand up to Loretta Lynch. I mean, the tweets wrote themselves, the press releases wrote themselves.
In so many ways, the ball was on the tee for the Republicans to vociferously come to the defense of the president. But my point here is, having been in the White House, if the president takes actions that give people hesitation and pause, they're politicians. They're going to weigh both sides and judge how far should I go.
And they don't want to be
There may things
contradicted.
that I don't know about. So my message here is that the president can create more allies. He should create more allies. But he's got to be more judicious about what he tweets and how far he goes.
But Ari, they're all in the same foxhole together, because ultimately, when it's with the midterms and every member of Congress is going to be re-elected or is up for election, they hope to be re-elected. You know, if they don't get stuff done, you know, if tax reform, doing something about the Affordable Care Act, it's either they hang together or they hang separately, to quote Benjamin Franklin.
I agree with that, but what makes a politician is they decide if they're going to jump in a foxhole with you. And you need to create an environment so they want to get into that foxhole. You have to earn it. Politicians never give it.
All right, so James Comey yesterday came out and kind of stunned me by saying, yeah, I leaked that to the New York Times through a surrogate. You could find him at Columbia, and he could go send it in. It makes you wonder what else is going on. And also, there are his private notes, which arguably might be government property. They could be, and they were never turned over to the Senate Investigative Committee, the Intelligence Committee, or the House Intelligence Committee. Do you think the president should go in the direction of legal action for that?
Well, you know, and the very fact that James Comey said he no longer has them makes them not personal. They are government property.
Exactly.
And so I think he is on some thin ice here. Legally, I don't know because I'm not a lawyer. But if I were a senator, I'd have pounded Comey and kept the questioning going. Have you ever done this before? Have you ever relied on, how many times has this Columbia professor done it? Had any other third parties outside the FBI done it? And they let him go on that, and I think Comey needs to explain that.
Well, the president is out tweeting this morning. He said, despite so many false statements and lies, total and complete vindication for him, and wow, Comey is a leaker. And that really is very damning for Mr. Comey, because he likes to present himself as a Boy Scout or the last honest man in Washington, D.C. And then, as it turns out, and how many times have we heard Donald Trump say, the real story regarding Russia are these leaks from the deep state that are out to destroy him.
Well, and the president is right. He is not a subject of the investigation, but that fact never leaked. And that's troubling. Two, there is no evidence of collusion. I understand why the president feels so strongly about this and wants to lift the cloud. If you know you never did anything wrong and the FBI is still investigating you, or anybody is,
and they have nothing,
you have a legitimate human desire and need to say, it's not true. Somebody should make it go away. We all know it's not true. But in the political realm, the president has to do this with discipline and with a wise approach, not just a smack 'em approach.
So how do you turn the wheel? Because now you're going into a weekend with all these different narratives coming out of the hearing. And, you know, the Choice Act happened with Dodd-Frank and rolling back some of that in the House. That was one tweet that Republicans could have said. I'm still beating the drums on why Republicans aren't stepping up. And they have a weekend to do this. What should be next?
The lesson is the Clinton years, frankly. When all this noise was taking place in the Clinton era, they got very good and smart about announcing initiatives, making news. That's what President Trump needs to do and keep doing. But when he announces his new FBI director on the same day they announce his infrastructure, he competes with himself. Spread it out on the planning calendar. And you're not going to win every day because other things interfere, but you'll win more days than not.
So you think it's important, Ari, right now to do what Bill Clinton did? Lanny Davis answers all these questions, right? All my lawyers answer all those questions. If you want to talk about anything else, you know, whether it's going on with the UK or game on.
Walled off, separate unit, let the outside lawyers handle it. The White House staff needs discipline. The president needs discipline. They don't touch it. They don't talk about it. They're policy people. That's what President Trump was elected to do. And the truth is, if they pass policies and GDP hits 3% and wages go up, particularly for blue-collar Americans, the president's going to be in strong shape. And that's what he was elected to do.
And he's got to flood the zone with that narrative probably pretty quickly.
That's what he has to be known for.
All right. Ari, for dropping by our new mezzanine level couch today.
Isn't it beautiful?
We're going to buy you a barbecue. You just have to go out on the street in front of the building.
Breakfast barbecue,
and then a band on turf. We'll find out.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
All right, great to see you.
Thank you.
Hey, turn around. Take a look who's here doing the headlines.
Morning.
Hi.
So if you're in a buying mood, what else do you want to buy today, Steve?
Okay, it's not really, I'm not really paying. I'm not pulling coin. It's just free for anybody. Come on down 48th and 6th Avenue, have breakfast with Ari Fleischer.
Good morning to you guys. Good morning to you. Let's start with this. The government contractor accused of leaking top-secret NSA documents also wanted to burn down the White House. Reality Winner denied bail after pleading not guilty in federal court. A judge calling her a danger to the nation after prosecutors revealed handwritten notes about plans to join the Taliban. She also told her sister she'd play the, quote, pretty white and cute card to get out of trouble. Winner is charged for leaking a report about Russian interference in the presidential election to an online news outlet. Hillary Clinton still invoking her election loss, this time giving a pointedly political commencement address at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, New York, encouraging students to fight for social justice.
Speak out on social media. Make your voices heard every single day. And when they even try to dismiss your lived experiences, maybe they'll call it identity politics. Stand up and say your identity is as important and valuable as the identity of anybody else.
Clinton's speech filled with veiled references to President Trump's administration and policies, but she did stop short of actually naming him. So how about this one? Thousands of people around the world taking aim at a farm stand for hosting a pig roast. Now listen up here, the event aiming to raise money for an animal shelter in Massachusetts. The Facebook event promoting the fundraiser now has more than 60,000 hateful comments.
People were saying there were bugs in the food, there's cockroaches in the building, all these things that are just completely untrue.
Now, most of the people complaining are vegans, offended by the idea of eating meat. And guys, I'll say to you, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not one of those who's offended by the whole meat-eating thing. Right. But regardless, it's strange that you're raising money for an animal shelter when you're having a pig roast.
It's always something. They probably won't show up for Ari's free barbecue.
It's especially ironic for the pig.
Yes.
It is.
All right. Jillian, thank you very much. Meanwhile, more reaction on the James Comey hearing. Our next guest says President Trump has done nothing wrong, and it's time for this witch hunt to end. Former Labor Secretary nominee and businessman Andy Puzder, who just put down his iPad and his phone.
We hope it's his iPad.
He's going to join us live
Andy,
next.
it's good to see you. So I'm going to come over.
Thank you.
All right. And Brian.
Hey, Brian. Oh, yeah, I'll take it from here, guys. Everyone stand back. The Grammy Award-winning Christian duo taking the world by storm. I think it's that camera.
All right, come on, get in there.
I'm marching out of the town into trust, out of the need to us. No turning back, no turning back, no turning back.
All right.
There's more, Brian. Greetings.
Yeah, Forgotten Country is here and in the green room getting ready.
It's
King Country to take
God
the stage.
is important too.
God's the best.
Yeah.
Our summer concert series continues.
Just not their
Thanks,
time.
God.
There they are in our Keurig